Hi everyone, and welcome back to lesson 4, where I'm going to talk to you about 2 additional measurements that I'd like you to take for any pattern, whether it be a woven or a knit. And the first thing you want to do is take a piece of elastic, a 1/4 inch or 3/8 inch of elastic, and tie it around your waist. Make a little knot there, something you can undo so you can reuse that elastic. Walk around for about 10 to 15 minutes. Bend from side to side. Let that elastic find your natural waist. And when it does, I want you to pick up a tape measure and take these 2 measurements. Now, I realize your natural waist may not be where you like your pants to sit or even a skirt. That's okay. We just need to know where your natural waist is to take these 2 measurements. All right, so the first thing is take your tape measure, and I want you to find your outside shoulder point. Now that shoulder point is going to be where that fleshy part meets the bone. So right on top of that edge of the bone, you want to look for the midsection, the center of your armhole on top, and then measure from that top bony part down to the center of your waist. So you're going over the fullest part of your bust, and then write that measurement down. Next, you're going to take the side waist measurement. So measure from the bottom of your armhole down to your waist and write down that measurement. So why might these 2 measurements be important? They're going to be very important when you work with wovens because you need to get that exacting fit. I like you to get used to taking these measurements because if you transition to a woven pattern, you're going to have to come back and take these measurements and compare them against the pattern. But when you're working with the knit fabric, it does become a little more tricky, and sometimes it's relevant and sometimes it's not. Our knit fabrics have that horizontal stretch going from 10% to about 100% stretch. But what you may not realize is that some of the knit fabrics have vertical stretch. So you may have no to minimal vertical stretch, or you might have a fabric that has a lot of stretch going up and down vertically on the body as well. We call this 4-way stretch because you got 2 and 2, 4-way. So 4-way stretch can really be a problem when you're trying to find where that waist is supposed to sit on your garment. And this is why 1-inch seam allowances are so important, because with those 1-inch seam allowances, if your waist of your pattern is right here and maybe your natural waist is down here, just by working with those 1-inch seam allowances, you can tweak the pattern to fit. But if you're only using 1/4 inch, you don't really have that much to go by. So that's why I like to say that sometimes it's relevant and sometimes it's not. Where I find that these measurements do become very relevant is if you use a fabric that doesn't have a lot of vertical stretch and you are very petite or very tall. That's where you have to start looking at this and deciding, maybe I should make some alterations to the torso to make it shorter or to make it longer. And I think this really comes into play like for bathing suits or swimsuits. In swimsuit season, people with long torsos always have a hard time finding a swimsuit that fits because many times it's just too tight from shoulder to the crotch length. So if you know that you have that issue, you may have a long torso. All right, so we're going to go right to the cutting table and I'm going to show you how to adjust for a short or long torso as well as that armhole if it's really cutting in to your skin, because oftentimes we find that as we get older, maybe we get a little more fleshy, those armholes may be a little too high. All right, so I'm going to teach you how to adjust those armholes. All right, you guys, last but not least, there's one more tip I want to give you, and that has to do with stitching with stripes. And you can tell I have a dress on. We're approaching 4th of July weekend in the United States, and I am wearing my dress to work today. However, you will notice, because I am full busted, notice what happens to my stripes. They start to spread out. I don't mind a little bit of horizontal spread on the stripes. But what I do mind on horizontal stripes is I have a garment like this, and I didn't think about this when I made it. So my stripes are going straight across. As they go over my bust, they start to spread out, and I think it looks kind of odd. So I do want to caution you with knits that you do want to think of the stripe factor. I find that when you're working with a floral print, many different types of prints, it doesn't matter because you just don't see it as much, but on stripes, you will. All right, so with that in mind, choose your fabric carefully, choose your print carefully, and let's get started down at the cutting table. after you take the measurements on your body, you're going to want to compare those measurements 1 inch in, because remember we accounted for a 1 inch seam allowance up here. So 1 inch in down to the waist, and compare that against your actual measurement. And do this on the front and the back. Then take the underarm seam. Now we did not add an inch to the arm's eye, so you're just going to measure down 1/4 of an inch, and then measure 1/4 inch down to the waist, and compare that from the pattern to your actual measurement. And if it's fairly close, I don't worry about it. It's when you have an extreme that you have to alter. So let's say you're really tall. Let's say you need to add 3 inches to your torso. So what I like to do is split it in 2 places. So when we split our pattern like this, let's say we take that 3 inches, and we're going to separate the pattern in the upper bodice 1.5 inches and separate the lower bodice 1.5 inches. And then we want to make sure that everything is in complete alignment. Add paper in here, tape the new paper so that you have that extra length, and redraw your lines from small to large to regrade that pattern. So that's what you do if you're really tall. Now, what if you're very petite? So notice that I drew purple lines right here and also right here. So let's do the opposite. So if you are 3 inches shorter in the torso, maybe what you would want to do, and well, not maybe, you will want to do this, you can bring this down 1.5 inches and bring this down 1.5 inches. Let's just say that that marking represented 1.5 inches, and then just tape it together. Again, you would be grading small to large, and then tape it together. There's no pattern paper to add because you're just overlapping, and that would account for a shorter torso. All right, take a look over here, the armhole. I see a lot of people online that they complain about tight armholes. All right, nobody likes tight armholes, they hurt. So what you can do is when we try on the dress, when we're fitting it, an easy way to take care of that is in fabric. You can just cut that armhole a little lower. But I don't like cutting out the sleeve until after we fit the dress, because you don't know how that's going to go. So if you do have to lower it, then you're going to have to do a similar alteration on the sleeve, which I will show you how to do. But for the pattern in the future, you want to box out that armhole right here. And notice that I drew a line lower. So I'm going to assume that we're going to drop our armhole 1/2 inch. So you draw your box here, cut it out, and then move this pattern piece down. And then you're just going to redraw small to large, and then fill this in with tissue. So what you have done is you have made your arm side a little bit lower and a little bit longer. All right, so that just makes it really easy and way more comfortable. So simple alterations that go a long way toward helping you obtain a great fit on a garment. While we probably won't need to do this, if you are basically average, if you're within that 5'4" to 5'8" range, adding that 1 inch seam allowance to your side seams will really help you just tweak that side seam in fabric. You got enough space there to restitch to mold to your figure and to mold to your waist if it's a little bit higher. It is when you are well beyond the pattern range that you have to think about doing alterations like lengthening and shortening, as well as armholes if you always find you have really tight armholes. All right, you guys, thanks for watching. In the next video, we are going to cut out our fabric from our pattern. So I'll see you then.